All right, welcome to the debut episode of LinkedIn for Lawyers, true stories of client acquisition told by attorneys, which is very much the reason I wanted to have this as a third season of my podcast and kind of looking around the world of LinkedIn marketing stuff. There's a lot of best practices and tools and tips and tricks using automation or not, and kind of word of mouth and networking. There's a lot of information out there. I wanted to bring out something different. I wanted you to hear and to see, depending on how you're watching this, true stories told by attorneys. So it's literally what has worked for them. It may not be a smooth story all around, because for most of us, marketing has lots of starts and stops. And we want to hear the true stuff, the real stuff from their mouths. So from that aspect, I'm looking forward to interviewing AnnMichelle Hart this afternoon, this morning for her. You're on the West Coast, right? Are you in Washington State?
I am in Washington State.
Okay, great. And before we get to you, I'm going to do some of the opening remarks as a host. So if you go to any of the major podcast channels, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, which I personally use, Google Podcasts, and you put into quotes LinkedIn for Lawyers, this podcast should appear instantly. To put LinkedIn for Lawyers in quotes in those podcast channels, I definitely like the episode and subscribe so that you can hear from other attorneys and sometimes hear marketing professionals of how they've gained business from LinkedIn. You can also watch this on YouTube as well as Facebook Live currently, as well as on LinkedIn. And every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, you can go to videosocials.net/watchlfl, for LinkedIn for Lawyers. That's Video Socials with an S at the end. So videosocials.net/watchlfl. And of course, if you are watching this, you will see that as a banner on top right above us. So without further ado, I'm looking forward to now. And Michelle, we've known each other for a little bit, but I don't really know you that well. But I'd love for you to share with me and the audience a little bit about your practice, how you got into the practice, and kind of go a little deep in terms of what you do, who you do it for, and why you practice in there.
Well, those are a lot of loaded questions, so let me take them a little bit at a time.
Sure.
Growing up, I always watched things, I'm going to really date myself, Ellery Queen and all those kinds of Quincy, and I really got intrigued in the law. But when I was younger, it was almost impossible for a woman to get into law, and it was really a man's world. As I went through my career, I actually was in sales and a couple of other things before I had some personal challenges. Sat in a courtroom for a little while, was still totally intrigued. Waited a year because I thought, you go to the hospital. Every kid wants to be a doctor if they're young and in the hospital, and sometimes that wears off. So about a year later, I took a week's worth of vacation and I sat in federal courts and state courts and went, yeah, still intrigued. So then I looked into going into the law, and I've absolutely loved it.
And then, of course, you had to go to law school, right? Because you were not trained.
I was no young. Yeah, I started law school, I think, about 37 or 38.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to be the oldest person in my class. I thought my classmates were all going to call me grandma. And I got there, and I was relatively surprised. The average age of our class was 38, and the oldest person in my graduating class was 88, and there were a half a dozen people or more in my class that were older than me. So it was so refreshing to have people around me that were really invested in the intellectual challenge of figuring out how to help people.
Good for you. And that must have enhanced the experience even more so, since you chose this career kind of very purpose-minded. So what area of the law do you practice in?
I'm in estate planning.
And why? Why did you pick the world of D&E and trust and estates and estate planning?
Gosh, I think that's one of the things that you learn when you go to law school is you hear a lot of people, why do you go into the law? Almost every one of us say because we want to help people. And I started off doing a couple of other things, and I was helping people, but I wasn't having the kind of impact one-on-one that I thought I was having or should be having. And so when I started looking for the future, I wanted to see where I can make the biggest impact. And I think for me, always being involved in kids, estate planning is where I can have an impact on parents who may not realize that they need a plan for their young kids. Stuff happens all the time. COVID's taught us life is short. You have to grab it when you can. And I don't want to see a parent leave their young children without a plan in place.
Sure. And so did you go into private practice right away? Right after?
I did not. I worked in a couple of law firms,
Sure.
and I was on my third law firm in 6 years, and the pandemic hit, and we had a slowdown in cases. Last in, first out meant I got shown the door. Thank goodness I had Plan B already in place and had already started training a year before for estate planning. And just the day after they let me go, I pushed play.
And was Plan B part of Plan B not only to focus on the world of estate planning? Was it also to become your own boss and start your own law practice?
Yeah, I had run a business before law school, yes. So I knew going into law school eventually I was going to work for myself, because for me, that's a better fit. I learned after being an entrepreneur that you're really not a good employee anymore.
Yeah.
And so I think my mantra through most of jobs after working for myself originally was, it's their business, it's not mine. It's their business. They can do it any way they want to. I'm just following the rules and trying to be helpful without being here's a better suggestion of ways to do it, because it is their business. They can run it the way they want to, which is why we all go into business for ourselves, is because we don't like the way somebody else is doing it. We just want to do it our way.
And so Plan B, you want to focus on estate planning, and included starting your own law practice. And this was just sounds like a couple of months ago, so a couple of years ago.
July 2020.
Right. So congratulations on we're almost at the 18th month
18
mark.
months, yeah.
18 months in, so congrats. And so that, like starting any business, be it a law practice or any business, that it can, entrepreneur means enter into risk, and that can be risky and challenging, let alone COVID and all that stuff. And how was it in the beginning, and when and how did you get into the world of LinkedIn?
Oh, I got into LinkedIn in law school, partly because I'm a connector. And so I realized, having done the whole connecting thing before in a former career, that your business is only as good as the foundation you're built on. And for me, that means a foundation of people I can call, people who may know more than I do or I can bounce stuff off of. For example, in Washington, I'm only licensed in Washington, but I know people all over the United States. Right. So if somebody hears this podcast and they say, hey, I need an attorney in fill in the blank state, call me. I probably know an attorney there. And if I don't know an attorney that you need there, I know an attorney that can find an attorney there.
Right.
And so for me,
1 degree, maybe 2 degrees of separation to even use LinkedIn nomenclature.
Correct. For example, I had a high school classmate just last night go, hey, anybody know a good divorce lawyer? I happen to know one, and I know him pretty well. And so I popped on and said, hey, you need to call Jeff, because I talk to him once a week, and I like the way he handles his customers, his clients, and he treats his clients like I do. And that is a big thing for me, because I don't want somebody to get into a law firm experience where they feel like a cog in a wheel and they're on an assembly line. I want them to be treated as an individual, and I want them to be heard, and he does that.
So the values match really well. And so kind of the purpose of this podcast and the video show is to not only talk about your own values and how that gels and how you got into LinkedIn, but kind of bringing those two worlds together. So you have a success story from LinkedIn. Share with us, how do you get referrals? How do you get clients from LinkedIn? And can you give us a concrete example?
Absolutely. So when I started my law firm, I realized that, of course, most attorneys, if you talk to anybody who's never hired an attorney before, all attorneys are bad except for the one they use. And realizing that the only way I'm going to reach people is other businesses or other attorneys who know me and then refer me out. I have intentionally built a huge network on LinkedIn. I just passed my 1,000th connection that I know personally.
Nice.
And that's been a whole, I don't just have anybody connected. I want to know if they are like me, if they can help my business or help my clients if I refer them out. And I want to know that there's some connection there. So it's taken me probably a little over 10 years to get to 1,000.
And if I could even pause right there, I think that's a lesson of an insight, because unfortunately, a lot of us, especially on my side of the table in the marketing world, it becomes this race of quantity and a badge of honor to be at 5,000, 10,000, some ridiculous number. But I think you bring it back to a more kind of sobering insight of that these people personally. And so these are real people to you. These aren't just like a number to check off in terms of winning some LinkedIn game of quantity, but rather quality relationships. So that's pretty insightful. So the fact that it took you 10 years for 1,000 connections to someone else who's kind of playing that game, that seems, why did it take her that long? But for you, it's a badge of honor that it took you 10 years for that 1,000 of real connections, where these are people who, to some extent, like, and trust, and they also know, like, and trust you.
Yeah. And so it's not all people I've met in person, not by any stretch of the imagination. But for those people that I know personally, I look to see who they know. And then I'm looking to see, does that person fit what I want to? Can I, if they don't, like, if I try to connect with them and they don't respond to me, sometimes I just drop them, because if they're not interested in having a conversation about the person that we know together or what their business is about, I don't want to be invested in their business more than they're invested in the connection.
And before we even get to the actual success story, talk to us about, how are you active on LinkedIn? Like, what does that mean? It sounds like you are actively looking to connect with people to have a genuine connection, as well as a LinkedIn connection.
I am.
Yeah, well, what does that for you mean? Yeah.
What that means for me is, at first it was posting articles and sharing other people's things, because I was trying to get people to understand where I am. And then I realized the people who were gaining business were doing videos. And so I started looking around. I got invited to a ABA Solo Says event that was held on Video Socials, and I got recommended to check it out as far as recording. I love the platform. I love being able to show, although it's a daunting thing when you first start. Recording yourself is scary. Doing that allows me to show my personality, and then all the people that I know on LinkedIn are mostly business to business, but they know other people and they're connectors. And so if they start liking my videos and they understand who I am through my videos, they then refer me to one of their clients who can then hire me. And that's what happened.
And I'll parse that a little bit. So full disclosure, right? You're a member of Video Socials. And of course, there is definitely a bias, right? As a co-founder of Video Socials, I'm definitely going to be highlighting members of Video Socials. By no means do I want the whole podcast to just be like a veiled commercial for Video Socials. There will be very explicit commercials for Video Socials. I don't need to hide it. So I appreciate that you're a raving fan of Video Socials. But so you came to videos in general, let alone Video Socials, through the American Bar Association has a listserv specifically for solo attorneys for almost 20 years, if not longer than that, called Solo Says. And basically a resource, from what I understand. I'm not an attorney, so I'm not part of Solo Says, but we get mentioned on Solo Says every now and then. So it's a resource for attorneys, for solo attorneys, to connect with each other. And of course, they are all, I'm assuming, members of ABA in this sense.
Yes, and paralegals. So we have a lot of paralegals that are on there also.
Okay, good. And so part of, they can connect with you on LinkedIn. They can learn about ABA Solo Says. Obviously, they'll learn about ABA Socials. But they can, of course, learn about your practice that way. So that's how you got into the world of video. So prior to Video Socials, you weren't posting videos on LinkedIn.
I was not, but I was watching other people's videos.
Okay, good. So that was going to be my question of, like, what even prompted you to even think of or consider video posting on LinkedIn? Because
I live with my folks and they're in their 80s. And so my downtime after they go to bed is catching up on emails and reading articles and things. And there were videos that were posted, and I liked them, but some of them I couldn't turn the volume on, and I can't read lips all that well. So it was a little frustrating. The ones that caught my attention were the ones I didn't have to listen to. I could actually follow along while they were. And there's one attorney that he's been posting videos, or he's not part of Video Socials, but he's some other group. I haven't figured out what. But I can now hear his voice in my head because I've heard him a couple of times. And now when I'm listening to his video, I hear him when he's talking, but I'm reading what he's saying. And I love that. And so I started going, if I'm going to have videos, I better have captions.
Yeah. And obviously that's a feature of Video Socials is captioning. So appreciate
that's why I work
for that as well. So you're posting videos, you're of course proactively connecting with people that you can have a genuine connection with. All this kind of in the soup. And now you also get business from LinkedIn. So it's not just all for naught or
Yes.
all for ego. It's an actual marketing, productive way of growing your practice.
Yes.
So talk to us about the kind of results you've seen.
I'll give you a specific example. Right early on, as I went solo, I got in touch with a financial planner who's here in the Puget Sound area. And she liked what I was doing. And I said, if you ever have a client that needs something relatively quickly, I'm a solo, I can pivot and I can move things around much faster than a bigger law firm can.
Mm-hmm.
So she called me and she says, I have a client who needs help now. And I said, what's going on? The client was going into the hospital for surgery and needed a healthcare authorization. Hospitals do have healthcare authorizations, but they're written from the point of the hospital and not from the point of not being in a hospital. And so there are some things that are to their benefit and not yours. And so we really need to have a healthcare authorization that's written from a different point of view. So she called me up and she was a little distraught and she said, can I have my daughter on the thing? I said, if you want to have your daughter on, I'm happy to do that. You understand that your daughter, that we're going to break attorney-client privilege by having your daughter present. She said, I think I really need her. So we got her daughter on the line and she was facing a health challenge where she was going to have exploratory surgery. And I don't know exactly what was going on, but she told me that they were not telling her whether she was curable or terminal. And that scared me. And I'm thinking all she wants is a healthcare directive. And so I started talking with her about that. And I said, if this ends up being bad news, and God, I hope it's not, but if it turns out to be bad news, you're already kind of scrambled, which is why she wanted her daughter there. What were to happen if it were really bad news? And now you're going to be even more scrambled and trying to figure out how to get all these other things in place. Wouldn't you rather have just an estate plan now and done? So if it is bad news, you don't have to come back. And she and the daughter, I muted so they could have a conversation, and they came back and they said, let's do it. And I'm happy I did that. That was a year ago, September. And I just found out she passed away 2 weeks ago. And so that's heartbreaking for me as an attorney to know one of my clients died, and I'm going to choke up. I'm sorry, but that's just who I am. I care about my clients. But I'm so thankful that she came to me and was referred to me by her financial advisor to get this in place. I can't imagine what her family would be going through without a plan in place.
I'm sure she's extremely grateful as well. I mean, you could have very easily taken, lack of a better word, the easy way out.
And just on the health directive?
Right, that's what they were asking for. Why ruffle feathers? Why be a counselor? Just be a doc preparer. But you decided to go one step beyond, which from a business standpoint and a marketing standpoint, of course, makes sense in that sense. But almost more importantly, I would say more importantly, it is the right thing for the client. And unfortunately, not proved itself, unfortunately.
Well, and again, that's where me as a solo, I have the time to put into my clients and talk with them. I think our first conversation was almost 2 hours, where a traditional law firm would have gone checking their watch. Okay, we're almost done. What do you want? You want a healthcare? Okay, let's just do it. And they would rush to the cash register. That's not serving the clients. It's serving the client's need for what they think they want, but it's not for what they really need.
Correct. And I think, also for the financial advisor that referred you, it puts her or him in a position of appreciation where now they're seen as a resource for the family. And that, while it didn't work out 100% of how they would have expected and wanted, at least they put in the right plan in place with your help.
Yes.
And it's amazing, right? I mean, that this is a family who now has the right type of, I'm going to use the word infrastructure in place, right? The plan and the processes in place. And it was really because of how you are active on LinkedIn. I mean, it becomes almost so simplistic. Just think of it that way. But these are real people being affected.
It sounds simple, but a lot of people don't realize how important networking is to whatever business you're running. I don't care if you're making lace doilies that you're selling at your church bazaar. You still have to get people to your church bazaar so they can buy your items so you can support your church. So having a big network, even though I'm only working in Washington, my network is big enough that if somebody has an issue and they need something somewhere else, I probably know how to find it for them.
And I think that really showcases kind of that 21st century Rolodex aspect of LinkedIn, where it's beyond, not only is it the 21st century Rolodex, of your first connections, first degree connections, but it's also the who knows who. And in this case, it wasn't a direct client from LinkedIn, right? But it was a who knows who. It was a B2B, peer-to-peer professional referral facilitated because of how you're active on LinkedIn. I see it.
Correct. LinkedIn doesn't normally get me to the client unless they're a business professional. It's usually a business to business, and then they refer me to a client. And that's really beneficial for me because, as I said before, people don't normally trust attorneys. But if they have a trusted advisor who knows me and trusts me, they will trust the advisor sending them to me. So it's a win for both of us. They have the credibility that they can refer somebody. And same thing with my clients. I have literally had clients where I'm looking at them going, you have this and this and this and this, and I'm realizing they have some pretty good assets. And my next question is, do you have a financial advisor? And if they say no, I'm like, have you ever thought about getting one? Because I usually see people with your assets having an advisor, and I kind of think you need one, but I would rather you talk to one to make sure that that's what you need. But it seems to me like all my other clients at your level have one, and I've referred business back to her, back to the financial advisor.
Which kind of shows that classic example of that circular reciprocity approach that not only comes to you naturally because you're a connector, but then also is aided and made very efficient and scalable because of LinkedIn.
And that's why I'm specific about who I go for that, because I want to make sure who I'm referring thinks like me and treats their clients like me.
That's excellent. So we're going to take a quick break, but before we do, and I want you to come back, and I asked you this offline, but for the benefit of the viewers, I'm going to ask you again for you to kind of put some thoughts, but don't answer yet. We're going to take a quick 1 minute break and come back. I'd love for you to share as we wrap up something that you really love about LinkedIn, and something that you don't really love, kind of hate, if you will, something that you really don't like about LinkedIn, and that can kind of help us put a bow on it. But so, AnnMichelle, stay tuned for me. After marketing hundreds of lawyers and related professionals, you know what we've learned? Networking for referrals is not enough, especially if you're busy, especially if you want to scale. To go beyond networking, you need 3 types of videos that will get you shared to new clients without more of your time. Posting videos here and there on social media won't get you results. Have you tried that? I want you to meet and copy the attorneys who are getting results. When you get results, the marketing pays for itself. You'll meet other well-seasoned, well-connected lawyers as we show you the step-by-steps in our free 20-minute success webinar. To reserve your free ticket, go to www.videosocials.net/scale. That's videosocials, plural, with an S at the end. videosocials.net/scale. My name is Vikram Rajan. I'm the co-founder of Video Socials and the host of the video podcast, LinkedIn for Lawyers. I'll see you at the webinar. Let's scale your referrals. Together, fun and done. Now, with a quick commercial break from our sponsor, which I am, of course, a co-founder of Video Socials, and you are a member of. So thank you again, AnnMichelle, for coming on the podcast. As we wrap up, I'd love for you to share something that you really don't like, and maybe we'll start with the bad news first. Something you really don't like about LinkedIn, and then we can conclude with something that you really do love about LinkedIn.
Well, and it's a drawback, but I don't think it's a problem with the platform because the platform is professional. But my drawback to it is that I can't get to consumers through LinkedIn. And because it is a business platform, I'm not expecting that. And some of my clients are professionals who figure it out, and then they call me and go, "Hey, I need one for myself."
People are people, right? So I mean, everyone needs a big plan. From that
but I'm not getting to the consumer through LinkedIn, and I wish there was a platform for consumers looking for business professionals.
It's and they've kept it B2B, and to some degree it carved that niche out in the world of social media. They've become the professional media, right? So I can appreciate that as kind of a drawback, but nonetheless, as you mentioned, there's that trust, implicit trust, when a trusted advisor recommends you. So that's great, and that's something that you really do love about LinkedIn.
I love that part of it, and I love that through LinkedIn I can have a meeting with somebody online through. Oh my goodness, the pandemic has given us so many gifts. I mean, it's been bad and it's horrible, but there's always opportunities in something bad, and the pandemic has given us the ability to meet with anybody, anywhere, online on Zoom. So I have taken full advantage of that. I think in the last, probably the last year, I've maybe done 500 or so meetings, which I never would have been able to do in person.
Yeah. So that's talk about efficiency of scale. That's tremendous. You've taken it by the horns. So good job. So congrats again on getting business from LinkedIn, because as I'm scheduling interviews, and we've got about 7 or 8 already scheduled, it's not everyone who does what you do, and thus they don't get the results that you do, right? So
Right.
it's the whole purpose of this video show and podcast is for other attorneys especially, but other professionals in general, to model your behavior and get the kind of success that you've achieved through LinkedIn. What's a great way for people to, sorry, go on.
Oh, I just want to add, for anybody who doesn't like networking, I get it. It wasn't my favorite thing either, but I forced myself to do it. I forced myself to learn how to do it, and because I recognized what the value is in it, and you just have to practice, practice, practice. And the thing that helped me mind shift is I'm not necessarily always looking for what I can get. I'm always looking for a connector for my clients. So I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing it for my clients, and that drives me.
It's a good way. That's a good way of putting it, right? That helps us get out of our comfort zone when we have a goal in mind, especially something that's not only selfish, but also servant. And as you see yourself as a servant leader and a counselor. After marketing hundreds of lawyers and related professionals. I don't know how that happened, but I'm glad we're back.
We are back.
As we wrap up, how can people get to know you? How can people reach you?
Watch my video.
Yeah, okay. Watch your videos on LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. The first couple ones, I'm an introvert. That was painful the first couple times doing a video. So please don't think you have to be perfect at it. I'm getting a little bit
after marketing.
Helpful
I don't know
to have
what's
people
malfunctioning with StreamYard, but go on.
Oh dear. I find it very helpful for the comments that people make in our training sessions and our video sessions.
Yeah.
And I'm getting a lot better. I'm trying to sneak my unique sense of humor in. I know death is a horrible thing. People hate talking about it. People hate doing an estate plan because they don't want to address it. But if I can throw some humor in it a little bit, I can take the ick factor out of it.
Sure.
And I try to find some way of making it a little amusing for people. And I hope they appreciate that part.
So the easiest way is to find you on LinkedIn, get to know you
Yes.
through your videos. Is there any other website or any other place that you would want people to get to know you through?
Yes, I have a Facebook page under Hart Law, and
Hart, Hart Law.
HARTLAW. And I also have a website at www.hartlawpllcesstateplan.com. And then you can always reach me at hartlawpllc@gmail.com, or you can email me or text me.
This has been tremendous, AnnMichelle. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and sharing your true story of client acquisition from LinkedIn. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. As we sign off, again, go to Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Podcasts. Put in LinkedIn for Lawyers in quotes, and you should be able to pull up this podcast very easily. You could also find it easily through the Video Socials YouTube channel. And of course, every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, just go to videosocials.net/watchlfl for LinkedIn for Lawyers. Again, my name is Vikram Rajan. I am the host of LinkedIn for Lawyers and the co-founder of videosocials.net. Don't forget to go to videosocials.net/scale to get your free ticket for that Scaling Referrals webinar. I'll talk to you next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.